The name is Persia. 2,500 years ago, a prophet named Ezekiel wrote it down. Today, we call it Iran. And right now, at this very moment, that ancient name is front-page news for a reason nobody saw coming. Inflation at 42.2%. Currency worthless. People dying in protests. But this isn't just about economic collapse. It's about positioning. Because when Iran falls, Israel rises. And that's exactly what the prophecy said would happen before the final war. Let me show you something most people are missing. In January 2025, Iran's currency hit rock bottom. $1 equals 1.5 million Iranian rials, the worst exchange rate in the nation's history. Store shelves are empty. Basic medicine costs more than people earn in a month. And the government? They're firing tear gas into hospitals where injured protesters are being treated. At least 36 people are confirmed dead, but those are just the official numbers. Human rights groups say the real count is much higher. These are the largest protests Iran has seen since the Mahsa Amini uprising in 2022, when over 500 people were killed by security forces. President Trump posted a warning on social media. If Iran keeps shooting peaceful protesters, America will intervene. He used 3 words that made every military analyst sit up straight: locked and loaded. But here's where it gets interesting. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, the man who has ruled with absolute power for 35 years, is reportedly preparing an escape plan. His destination? Moscow. Why would the most powerful man in Iran suddenly need an exit strategy? Because right now, Iran's economy isn't just struggling. It's in free fall. Iran's economy shrank by 0.6% in the first half of the year that started in March 2025, according to central bank data. Construction suffered a 12.9% slump. Agriculture contracted by 2.9%, and industry dropped 3.4%. These aren't just numbers. They're jobs disappearing, factories closing, families losing everything. Inflation hit 48.6% in October 2025 and 42.2% in December. The IMF now ranks Iran 4th in the world for inflation, behind only Venezuela, Sudan, and Zimbabwe. Reports indicate basic goods prices are expected to rise by 20 to 30% in the coming weeks. The currency tells an even darker story. On March 19, 2025, the rial passed 1 million to $1, making it the most worthless currency in the world. By January 2026, it had fallen to 1.47 million rials per dollar. Power goes out nationwide for 3 to 4 hours every day due to the energy crisis. Half of Iran's industry has halted because of rolling blackouts. And the oil money? The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' share of oil export revenues will rise from 30% this year to 50% next year. More than $13 billion. Not for the people, for weapons, for proxy wars. But whose survival are we really talking about? Iran built something called the Axis of Resistance, a network of armed groups designed to surround Israel like a ring of fire. For decades, this strategy worked. Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Houthi rebels in Yemen, militias in Iraq and Syria, all funded, trained, and armed by Tehran. Hassan Nasrallah, Hezbollah's leader, was killed in an Israeli airstrike in 2024. He had admitted on tape that Hezbollah's budget, weapons and supplies all came from Iran. After his death, the organization lost its most vital supply route when Syria's Assad regime collapsed in December 2024. Hamas suffered similar devastation. Yahya Sinwar, the mastermind behind the October 7th attacks, was killed in October 2024. Mohammed Daif, Hamas's military commander, was killed in July 2024. In May 2025, Mohammed Sinwar, Yahya's brother, and Hamas's new military leader, was also killed. One analyst described Hamas bluntly: "It's no longer a strategic asset for Iran. It never will be again." But reports indicate Iran is now trying to rebuild. In late June 2025, U.S. forces intercepted a vessel carrying 750 tons of Iranian missiles, drone engines, and radar systems heading to Yemen's Houthis. Tehran denies the shipment existed, calling it a propaganda attempt. The question experts are asking, is Iran rebuilding or just pretending it can? Inside Iran, something else is shifting. Protesters are now chanting, "Neither Gaza nor Lebanon. My life for Iran." They're angry that their government spends billions on proxy wars while Iranians starve. One Middle East analyst said Iran's proxy deterrence has been punctured but not abandoned. Which brings us to the part nobody's talking about. Israel's military position in the Middle East has fundamentally changed. According to The Economist, Israel has achieved a level of military dominance that may surpass even the aftermath of the 1967 Six-Day War. In June 2025, Israel launched a 12-day military campaign against Iran, over 350 airstrikes across 27 provinces. They targeted missile sites, military bases, nuclear facilities, and government buildings. Senior military leaders and scientists were killed. Iran's uranium enrichment operations were temporarily halted. Here's what analysts at Chatham House concluded. Israel now benefits from much greater room for maneuver, while Iran has no good options left to defend its shrinking influence. The balance of power has shifted dramatically. For decades, Iran used proxy groups to prevent Israel from leveraging its conventional military advantages. That strategy is collapsing. Hamas is severely weakened. Hezbollah is wounded and focused inward. Syria's Assad regime, Iran's only state ally, fell in December 2024. Even Iran's missile stockpiles are running low, according to regional strategists. Gulf Arab states welcome the decline of Iran's regional influence, but they're also worried about what comes next. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz stated in June 2025 that Israel will maintain air superiority, prevent nuclear advancement, and respond to any Iranian support for terrorist activities. President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu have both asserted they would take preventive military action if Iran tries to rebuild its nuclear program. But there's another dimension to this shift that most analysts are missing entirely. Because 2,600 years ago, a Jewish prophet named Ezekiel wrote down something very specific. He described a war that hadn't happened yet, a war involving nations that would one day come against Israel from every direction. In Ezekiel chapter 38, verses 2 through 6, the prophet names the attackers. Leading them would be Gog from the land of Magog. Biblical scholars widely identify this as Russia and possibly surrounding territories. But Gog doesn't come alone. The text lists his allies by their ancient names. Persia is named first among them. Until 1935, Persia was the official legal name of Iran. Biblical scholars point out that Persia appears first in the list of Gog's coalition partners, suggesting Iran plays a leading role among the allies. The prophecy also mentions Cush, which scholars identify as Sudan, Put, identified as Libya, Gomer and Beth Togarmah, regions associated with modern Turkey. All Islamic nations, all hostile to Israel today. The prophecy describes this attack happening in the latter days, a phrase used throughout Old Testament prophecy to describe the period leading up to the end times. It says, Israel will have been regathered from many nations and will be dwelling securely in the land when this invasion begins. Here's what makes this prophecy remarkable. Ezekiel wrote it around 593 BC. At that time, Israel didn't exist as a nation. The Jewish people were scattered. Jerusalem was destroyed. There was no way to know they would ever return. Yet Ezekiel described a time when Jews would be back in their ancestral homeland, surrounded by enemies from the north, south, east, and west. Israel was reborn as a nation on May 14, 1948. And now, Iran, ancient Persia, is collapsing. Some biblical scholars point to something happening right now that matches the prophecy almost perfectly. On January 17, 2025, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian signed a 20-year strategic partnership treaty. The agreement covers defense cooperation, intelligence sharing, counterterrorism, energy, and technology. Remember Ezekiel's prophecy, Gog from Magog, Russia, leading an alliance with Persia at the front. This treaty formalizes exactly that relationship. But here's what makes this even more significant. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Andrei Rudenko specifically stated, "The treaty does not create a military alliance with Iran or mutual military assistance obligations." In other words, Russia is cooperating with Iran but won't defend it if attacked. During the Israel-Iran escalation in June 2025, Russia advised its citizens to leave both Iran and Israel. Moscow stayed neutral. It didn't intervene. Biblical scholars note this matches the prophecy's description. In Ezekiel 38:13, when the invasion begins, certain nations ask Gog, "Have you come to plunder?" They question the attack, but don't stop it. They observe from the sidelines. The prophecy also describes Israel as dwelling securely in the land when this invasion happens. Critics have long argued Israel has never truly been secure, always surrounded by enemies, always at war. But if Iran collapses, if Hezbollah is neutralized, if Hamas is destroyed, if Syria remains fragmented, for the first time in 76 years, Israel would face no immediate existential threat on its borders. No proxy armies. No coordinated multi-front attacks. That's the kind of security the prophecy might be describing. And that window might be opening right now. Israel's regional position has fundamentally transformed in ways that would have seemed impossible just 5 years ago. In September 2020, Israel signed the Abraham Accords with the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. These were the first Arab nations to formally recognize Israel since Jordan in 1994. Economic and security coordination between the signatories has grown substantially, surviving even the Gaza conflict that began in October 2023. In November 2025, Kazakhstan announced it would join the Abraham Accords. In December 2025, Israel recognized Somaliland as an independent country, with Somaliland pledging to join the accords. Then came June 2025. On June 13th, Israel launched what one IDF general described as a moment when the stars aligned. Operation Rising Lion targeted Iran's nuclear program, military leadership, and missile infrastructure in a 12-day campaign. According to the Times of Israel, Israel had reached peak readiness, while Iran's proxy network had collapsed. In what's been called Operation Red Wedding, 30 top Iranian military commanders were eliminated in near-simultaneous strikes. This included Hossein Salami, head of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and Mohammad Bagheri, chief of staff of the armed forces. Operation Narnia killed 9 senior nuclear scientists working on Iran's weapons program, all within minutes. The U.S. joined the campaign on June 21, 22, striking nuclear facilities at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. A ceasefire was announced June 23. But here's what matters most. Iran's deterrence strategy has been shattered. The proxy network is gone. The missile arsenal is depleted. The nuclear program is damaged, though reports differ on how badly. And biblical scholars are watching this moment very carefully. Because if you overlay the prophecy from Ezekiel 38 onto what's happening right now, something remarkable emerges. The prophecy said Persia would be part of a coalition led by Russia against Israel. That relationship was formalized on January 17, 2025. But Russia refuses to defend Iran militarily. Russia stayed neutral during the June conflict. It advised its citizens to leave. It's cooperating with Iran while maintaining distance. The prophecy said this invasion would happen when Israel is dwelling securely in the land. For 76 years, Israel has been surrounded by enemies. But if Iran's regime collapses, if its proxies stay destroyed, if its nuclear program remains crippled, Israel would face no existential threat on its borders for the first time since 1948. That's the security window the prophecy describes. The prophecy said this would happen in the latter days, after Israel had been regathered from many nations. Israel was reborn in 1948, after 2,000 years of exile, exactly as predicted. Now here's the part that should make everyone pay attention. Biblical scholars note that Ezekiel 38 describes what happens when this invasion begins. According to the text, God himself intervenes. The attacking nations turn on each other. A great earthquake strikes. Fire falls from heaven. The invaders are destroyed not by Israel's military, but by divine intervention. And Iran's supreme leader? He's planning his escape to Moscow. The pieces aren't just falling into place, they're already on the board. The only question left is, how much time is left on the clock?